Then let's go into the offshore geotechnical engineering. So this is basically in the middle of the sea. So these structures are really built in the middle of the sea. So you have to be concerned with your foundation design, your construction, how to construct this kind of structures, maintain it. So if you see, there is a continuous exposure to water, right? These structures are continuously exposed to water. What will happen to corrode? So you have to maintain this for 20 to 50 years. So if it is continuously eroding, what will happen? Your structural elements will fail. So you should have a basic coating specifications, how to develop your rust-free elements. All this kind of things will come under your maintenance. And then decommissioning for the structures. So decommissioning is after once you find that oil and gas is being fully extracted and there is no more oil and gas from that place. So you should also be responsible to uninstall it. Keeping the structure for a long term permanently is not a good solution. Okay, it will try to explode. So you should also decommission that. So the structures are basically composed of oil platforms, artificial island, or submarine pipelines. And these kind of structures are subjected to waves, wind, current, tides. So all your building loads, all the loads will be, this will be really subject to the wind also, right? So here you will have your waves, current, tide, but here you will have your wind also into picture. So what you have to do, you have to design for that also. So basically, you have to go for a pile foundation. You will ask me where to install my pile here. So the structures are basically into two components. One is a jacket structure. This yellow color, whatever you're seeing, is a jacket structure. It is like a tower. Okay, it is like a tower. And this is a jacket structure, and this is your deck structure. Your deck structure is comprises of everything. So whatever things you require for your oil and exploration, all the facilities will be there. Even if you want to live there for a year also, you should have all your living space, restrooms, food, everything you should have. You see, even your tower crane is installed on this. So it is a very, very huge load. When this becomes a failure, then you will imagine the total cost also. Okay, so let's see into the geotechnical part now. So what happens? Your pile foundation comes into effect here. So how do you do this actually? Your jacket legs, or maybe it can be 4-legged or it can be 8-legged, also depending upon your load. So you have to install your pile through your jacket legs. These will be empty. These are hollow. Okay, these are hollow. You don't have any material inside. So you have to install your pile through this. And you will ask me how to go deep into this. These jackets will be resting on your seabed. Seabed, you will have your seabed maybe 100 meters deep from this level. So you can see only water, right? But your seabed, your soil bed, if I say this, maybe you will be very clear. Your soil bed, top of the soil will be somewhere 100 meters below this. So you will have to appropriately design your depth of jacket also. Okay, so if your seabed level is 100 meters, then that this top provision will be fully a structural concept due to your wind or waves or anything. They have an additional provision for this jacket also. So what happens is, once you install your pile, it will produce through this jacket, right? Empty leg, and then it will touch your seabed. Once it touches your seabed, then it will start going into your soil. Fine. So these jacket structures will directly rest on your seabed. So how you bury your foundations in your onshore, same way you have to bury your jacket structures also, like 0.5 meter into your soil bed. Okay, and then these piling will be going through your jacket leg, and then it will touch your seabed and it will go to your design depth. So your pile capacity, you always design based on your soil layers, right? What is it is a soft clay or it is a dense sand. Based on that you calculate. So once you calculate total length of your pile, plus you have to take care of the jacket length also. So you should always have your pile length will always start from here. So you should have additional provision for the jacket length also. So whatever length you are inserting in the seabed level based upon your soil profile plus your jacket length will be your total length of the pile. If it is 100 meters here, 100 meters is your seabed level. And then in offshore, we always call it as a seabed level. We don't call it as a ground level. We always refer as a seabed level. That is where your soil bed starts. Okay. So from there, if your seabed level is like 100 meters from this level, think maybe your pile, total length of the pile, maybe it can be 150 meters also. So you can ask me, should I install 150 meters of the pile in one go? But you have to install a 150 pile length, but you should not do it in one go. That is very risky. And moreover, in your real practices, nobody construct a 150-meter pile length. They do it in a segments. Like they have 7 segments. So suppose if you have 1 segment, so you get so 20 into 7, 140 meter plus your additional 10 meter. So you have 8 segments totally. So 8 segments has to be done in stages in one go. So suppose you're installing 8 segments here, then what will happen? This will have an eccentric effect, then jacket will topple. So that once you finish your first segment of your pile, then you have to go diagonally here and install your first segment here. And then simultaneously you have to install your third segment also and fourth segment. And then once you finish this cycle, then you have to come for your second segment. This is how the installation works. So you should have a little understanding on installation also. Okay, so in terms of geotechnical, you have to do your offshore geotechnical investigation, and you have to study about your soil bed, your soil parameters, what is present below the ground level, I mean the seabed level. And then once you do this, you have to calculate your pile capacity, right? Your vertical capacity. Once you finish this, the main important thing is your pile drivability. So once your pile is installed in jacket, until it reaches your seabed level, you will not have any pile drivability, right? I mean, due to this hammer, once you touch your, once this piling touch your seabed level, and if it is encountering any hard strata, then you will have your hammer into effect. So what will happen once you have this hammer into effect, you will have your dynamic stresses developed. So you should also study this part also, not only the pile capacity, you should also study these parts also. Fine. So in the pile drivability study, you will have to take into account 2 things. One is you have to check the hammer which you have selected should follow your refusal criteria. Suppose if it is per meter, it should not be greater than 1000 blows. If it is greater than 1000 blows, then your hammer capacity has to be increased. Maybe you have to go for higher capacity hammer. So that thing you have to check. And second thing, it will be developing your dynamic stresses, right? Even that you have to check during your drivability study. So you always, in your structure, you always calculate your shear stresses, allowable bending moments, bending stresses and all, right? Same way, you will also have to study your dynamic stresses here. Okay. These combined thing is studied using your GRL Reap software. You don't have to do any hand calculations. Once you give your pile cross sections, your soil properties, here it is a dynamic soil properties. Okay, it is not a static one; it's a dynamic one. So you have to give your dynamic soil properties, your hammer parameters. Once you do this in your GRL Reap software, it will do your feasible study. That is your blow count. You have to check your blow count. It should not be greater than 1000 blows per meter. And you have to check whether the stresses are within the limit, that is the dynamic stresses are within the limit. Okay. So next is the coastal geotechnical. So my favorite thing is coastal geotechnical. Actually, I love this part of field. Actually, this is like not into the sea really, but it is near to the shoreline. So you know you've been to beaches, right? So where you stand is a shoreline, right? That is near to the coast. So that is where these type of structures are really built. These are not really built in the middle of the sea, but these are near the shoreline. Okay. So let's see what all the structures we have. So we have the breakwaters, we have dolphins, we have loading platforms, we have cofferdams and keywords. Let's get into detail what are these structures. So as a geotechnical part, we have these concerns. We have to check the geotechnical designs for all these structures. Okay. Same way, this is also exposed to waves, wind, current, and because it is near to sea, right? So obviously this will be taken into account. So we have to obviously do a geotechnical study for this. So your breakwaters. So this is actually front view. I will show the cross section. So if you take a cross section like this, I will show you breakwaters. So this is your cross section of your breakwater. So if you see a seabed level, it will not be 100 meters, okay, but it will be like minus 18 from the surface water level. It will be 18 meters below. So you will have your seabed level starting minus 18. So these are the surface elevations. These levels will be given to you by the surveyors. Okay, so don't get confused with the levels. Okay, maybe in your onshore always it will be plus, but in your marine, in your sea, it will be always it will be minus, because it is going deep very, after it is near ocean, so it will be having a minus there. So this is your soil bed. This is naturally found soil. On this you will have your breakwaters like this, the structure which we have seen in the slide. So this is just a cross section. So you will have your rock fill material, you will have your rock material here, like tetrapods, very big boulders. Maybe it will be 10 tons also. No, not 10 tons, it will be like 1 tons also. So that much huge material you're going to place, because these breakwaters are you're going to protect you from the loading. Going to protect the waves from the loading platforms. So so these what is happening, this is your loading platform. Okay, I will tell you what is loading platform. So you can see a thin line here, this is a breakwaters. So what will happen, the waves which is coming here, these breakwaters will protect. That is what it is called, breakwaters. So once the waves are passing, very high waves are passing, these breakwaters will be built to cut off the waves, so that these loading platforms are operated very safely. Okay, when you're in ocean, you have to be very careful. You have major accidents also there. Okay, so these are the breakwaters. So this mainly you have to check your slope stability. This is your like embankment, right? It's basically like embankment only. So you have to check your slope stability, and you have to calculate your bearing capacity. Where this breakwaters are sitting on your soil bed, there you have to check your bearing capacity, as well as your, due to this huge weight, what will happen, your soil will try to settle also, right? So you have to calculate the soil settlement also. Okay, the next come to cofferdams. So cofferdams is like a box shaped structure. So this is like earth retention system. There I have explained in onshore, but here in offshore. So cofferdams are mainly used for developing the island. So if you want a home, a sweet home in your ocean, you can develop your artificial island. So for that, you have to do some earth retention work, and then you have to fill your material, and then you can enjoy your lifestyle there. But if you have something like construction in your water, then what will happen? You have to construct this part so that water should not be a disturbing factor for you. So what will happen? You should have to do your sheet pile retention. You have to go for a sheet pile retention wall here, and then you have to pull out your water out. So you will be having a dewatering equipments here, so that you can pull your water back to your ocean. So this space is fully now dry area. Okay, so if you see carefully, these sheet pile structures are continuously exposed to water, right? So you will have to take into account that one. So because of the high water pressure also, this sheet pile will try to deflect more, bending moment will be more. So due to your water is a very killing element in your geotechnical design. Okay, so these kind of structures you will be encountering. You have to analyze this kind of structures. Okay, so these are called cofferdams. It is a box-shaped covered structure. So these are called cofferdams. And then loading platform. Here, what will happen? Whatever oil and gas which you are bringing from the offshore, you'll have to transport to your onshore, right? So these loading platforms will be used temporarily for loading all your things, and then from here it will be transported to your onshore, or any kind of things. Like if your material has to travel from a country to country, it will anyway have to touch your port, right? This is a common area for port and harbor only. Okay, there is nothing much more complicated in this. So whatever material you bring from your any country or from offshore, you will have to transport here. This is why we call this as a marine terminal. So you have a loading platforms. Basically, these loading platforms will be with the pile foundations. Basically, it will be a big pile foundations. And then key walls. Key walls are nothing but your concrete blocks. So I will stop sharing this one and then I will open something. The key walls are also your loading platform to unload and load your things. But what will happen? You will have your blocks, concrete blocks. These are the concrete blocks. You don't have any reinforcements here, okay? Just a concrete blocks, but only you will have your caping beam, like you have a pile cap in your pile, you will have a caping beam. So this caping beam will take some kind of mooring loads. Like if a barge is coming, you have to move your barge also, right? So that kind of things your caping beam will be taking. So that is why you will be having only reinforcements in your caping beam, okay? So what will happen? These are the blocks which is placed one above the other. So you will have this level fixed, right? Also, you will have the seabed level also. So from the seabed level, you have to bring your platform till your ground level. So by this, by stacking your blocks one above the other, you build a platform. So if you see, this is in front of the shore. This is fully in front of the shore. This is like it is going towards your land. If you take a cross section, so this will be a block. This block's front face will be your shore. This will be going to your shore area, middle of the sea. But this will be going to your land on shore. Okay. So this is also a geotechnical problem. When you have these kind of blocks, you will have to design your blocks for your bearing capacity. You'll have to check for your bearing capacity. You'll have to check your overturning of the blocks. So because you will have a pulling load here due to mooring, right? So you will have to check about this overturning, and you will have to check about the sliding also. So suppose you see a truck is standing here. So what will happen? Because of your truck load, they will have your soil mass pushing here. So what will happen? This will push your soil mass laterally onto the blocks. So what will happen? This will have a overturning effect. So all this kind of checks, geotechnical checks you have to do. The main important thing is you will have a water level. Since this is a shore area, you will have a water levels. So it will be a combined effect due to soil conditions, due to water conditions, due to the load here. You have to check your bearing capacity, sliding and overturning. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. So basically I told these will be for slope stability, bearing capacity and settlement problem. This is for designing your analysis and design of your sheet piles. Okay, you cannot use a secant pile and all because secant piles are concrete walls, right? You cannot do your secant walls in the water. You cannot do a concrete wall in the water. So you can only use your steel sheets, steel structures, which is a sheet pile wall for building your coffer dams. And these platforms are marine terminals for offloading and unloading. And the key walls also says it is used for the same purpose of offloading and loading. Yeah, so these are the geotechnical problems in your marine. So most importantly, you will have to do your geotechnical investigation. It will be purely offshore geotechnical. And then let's get into your case study. This is what simple project I was saying. It is a refuse derived fuel. This is in the Middle Eastern region, Quain. You can have a Google search like where is Quain. So they wanted to use their house not to throw the waste. Rather, they wanted to get the waste from the house and then convert that into useful energy. So they wanted to use those energy as fuel. Okay, so for that they wanted to construct some operation building. So the size of the plot was too small. It was 300 by 200. But even the client has purchased this thing, but he wants to make up this plot. He wants to make up money from this and then put it here. Okay, so this is basically a business idea. So if you see the surface levels, these levels are given to us by the surveyor. So if you see your level is uneven, you have a plus 30 here, plus 12 here. So what you do is you have to fill your ground. Let's go into a building layout now. So this is your operation area. This is where your waste will be converted into your fuel. And this is your parking area. This is your administration areas. So major building loads are here. So you have to give your boreholes spread here, because it's your major building area, and you can give your one borehole here, but major 3 boreholes here, because here it's your major loading, right? So you will have a major operations here. So these are the storage area. These are the waste storage area. So these waste will be brought in here. They will be converting into energy and they will be transporting to some other plant. So let's get into geotechnical design now. So these areas having been given to us by the surveyor, we'll have to now make up this ground now. So what happened is like client asked us to give the level at plus 21 UMD. So UMD is nothing but Umalcoin datum. Okay, so plus 30 Umalcoin datum, but here it was plus 12 UMD. So what we did is we cut the level from here. We cut the level here and then we try to fill here because we try to have the see the material here, backfill material. So it was suitable for the construction. It was nearly the beach sand. It was really good. So those materials, we did not get any material from outside. Rather, we try to use this material in this. Okay. So we brought up this these plus 12 also to plus 21. So what we did from plus 30, we came to plus 21. From plus 12, we went to plus 21. But what happened is we carried out a soil investigation. Client pushed us to start the soil investigation immediately. So our plot was half ready. So till here, we didn't have, still here it was like a hilly area only. So what we did is we did a soil investigation here. We know that these are really dumped. They didn't do any proper compaction here. We know that there will be a loose fill here. So as we expected, the results were like that. So we did a cone penetration test here. So we did a cone penetration test, basic trial test. Like you see this, we have given 6 tests, like 1, 1, 2, 3 here, 4 here, 5, 6. So if you see here, this blue area is a local filling area. This plus 30 is your cut area, right? So if you see your these area, let us see the results of 4, 1, and 2 here. So cone resistance, cone penetration is just your strength, representing your strength of the material. It is represented in terms of your resistance. Nothing but your cone is pushed. Cone is pushed with some pressure into your ground, and then it will read out your value in terms of your, then it will come in terms of your graph. Yeah, that will be given in terms of your resistance. That is how you call it as a cone penetration resistance. So if you see the graph, this value, if you read here, this will be depth, this will be elevation. Okay, this will be your depth, this will be your cone penetration resistance here. So if you see here, it's like if you see, it will be 2 MPa. This 2 MPa is very loose material. Maybe you will get your bearing capacity only 50 kPa, which is not suitable for your building foundation. Okay, but you see your level till where it has gone. So it's plus 23 here and plus 15. Almost it will have something like 9 to 10 meters of filling here. So what we did is, yeah, you should also see, look into the cut area. This is cut area, right? We also have the CPT test results 3, 6, and 5. So these are cut area. So if you see into that area, so you have a very good bearing resistance here. See, all your values are greater than 10. Only your few 2 meters are like that, but still it will be in the cut area. So see, all your cone resistance value has shooted up about 10 MPa. So this is a very good bearing stratum for your foundation loads. Okay, so we hired a subcontractor called VSL Intra4 ME. So these people are very good in ground improvement. That is what I told you. If you're in a ground improvement company, you will be well experienced in that. So they are a specialist in compaction, I mean the ground improvement methods. We developed this area, we developed we told the VSL to improve only this ground, okay, improve this part of ground, because this we didn't touch because it is already a good bearing stratum. So what we did is they gave us a proposal for the rapid impact compaction and dynamic compaction, which I have shared in your under your ground improvement methods. So what happened? What happened is the green area and the blue area, the surface, it requires only a 5 meter improvement only, not very deep. But if you see in the localized in this area, it was like a 10 meter, roughly around 8 to 12 meters of improvement you need. So these areas were dynamic compaction. So I told you dynamic compaction will be for 10 meter improvement, whereas for rapid impact compaction is for only for 5 meter. So we applied our value engineering optimized method here while giving the solution. So this is how your value engineering works. This automatically will control your cost, right? So we had a dynamic compaction here, and we had your rapid compaction here. So if you see in this, so these are the cut area, right? This is the filling area. So these are green. In the green area is like the dynamic compaction area, and these outer areas somewhat in the orange, it is a rapid impact compaction. It requires only a 5-meter improvement, but here it is a 10-meter improvement. It really needs a 10-meter improvement. Okay, so now I'll show you a zoom of F3. Okay, what they did is actually they divided these into grids, like a 25-meter by 25-meter spacing. Okay, you cannot go and do compaction or anything on your surface at anywhere, so you should have follow some specified method, right? So they divided these area into 25 by 25-meter grid, which is shown here, and then I'll show you this 25 by 25 F3 box here. Okay, because this was too much, it was a 10-meter improvement. So what they did is, this is a 10-meter. So here if you see, you can see a circle as well as a square. So what they do is, this circle is a primary point and this is the secondary point. Once they finish compacting this primary points, these primary points, and then they will bring their compaction and equipment, and then they will compact these square part. So all this compaction, how they did is, let's go back to ground improvement. So all this ground improvement they did with this technique. Normally they use this only. Okay, they used to lift this and then drop this, lift this and then drop this. So once you see here, this one is your primary point, 2 is your secondary point. In your cross section, if you see, 1 is your primary point, 2 is your secondary point. 1 is your primary point, 2 is the secondary point. So once they finish this 1, 1, 1, they did 2, 2, 2. So if you see the stresses here, the primary point and the secondary point stresses are getting overlapped, making your soil very denser. So this part, you see, these triangle parts will be more denser than this. Okay, because your stresses are getting overlapped also, because it is a logic of stress distribution in a 45-degree angle. So really, this loose soil was converted into a denser part in the later stage. So if you see here, I will show you, they even substantiated their work also, like they proved their work. So what happened is, in this F3 grid, first they will have the pre-CPTs here. Okay, first they have to do your pre-CPTs first. This, we have already done in this soil investigation program, but still they will have to, as a contractor, they have to do at each grid your pre-CPTs, cone penetration test. Once they finish pre-cone penetration test, they will have to do this improvements, okay, primary improvements, secondary improvements. Once they finish this, they will have to do 2 post-CPT tests. One in the middle of 2 points, the other one in the centroid from the circle, because this is all primary, no, this is secondary. So they wanted to do in between of one primary, and then they wanted to do a centroid from this primary point. Okay, then I will show you the results. So before this, I want to show something. This was a design criteria set by us actually. So our foundation, our structural people told they need a bearing capacity of 150 kPa based upon their foundation pressure. So in order to achieve a bearing capacity of 150 kPa, we'll have to look back the cone resistance. So these values should be up to 8 MPa. These 2 MPa should be shoot up to 8 MPa. So we need 8 MPa to achieve 150 kPa, and our settlements should be 25 mm for 50 years time period, and there should be a groundwater table should be 2 meters. We were so lucky in this site, we didn't have groundwater table, that is, it was very deep, 10 meters below the ground, and earthquake magnitude was 6, maximum acceleration below the bedrock should be 0.15 G. It was also not earthquake prone zone also, so it was very favoring us. So once we finish this, so they gave us 8 MPa line. Okay, so this is corresponding to 8 MPa. So you have a cone resistance, tip resistance, and you have your elevations here. So you have your performance line. So if you see these blue, this blue is a pre-CPT. So they have given this pre-CPT here. So it was lesser than this performance line. Once they improved their ground, they did the post-CPT at 2 points, right? One at the center, one at the centroid. on. So we have all the points got after the performance line. So we try to achieve after like greater than 10 MPa, and we were so happy. We appreciated them also. So they try to achieve all this criteria. And then for us, it was a simple calculation. We wanted to calculate the bearing capacity for this raft foundation. Like this was 150 meter by 3 meter. So it was serving the bearing capacity of 150 kPa. And then finally what they did is actually, since if you see this area is a 10 meter fill area, right? But your raft was sitting here. Your raft was sitting on your fill area. So we wanted to test this area mainly because these are all very good areas. So in order to test this area, we wanted to give a full plate load test. We had a plate load test setup also. So even the plate load test, we're giving the satisfying bearing capacity and settlements. So we appreciated those guys, okay? And then that was the end of our project. And then, as I said, geotechnical softwares or these for your geotechnical problems. So Plaxis 2D and 3D, you will be having your finite element modeling for any slope stability or sheet pile wall design per second pile wall design, settlement. Also, you can have your 2D, 3D tunnel links. So any kind of problems, geotechnical problems, you can use Plaxis 2D and 3D. And you can use your geoslope. Basically, you have under geoslope, you have a slope W, seep W, sigma W. Slope W is for slope stability problem, seep W is for seepage analysis, and sigma W is for load deformation, like foundation pressure versus your settlement problem. So if you give your load on your ground, what is the settlement? So that was used for the sigma W. And you have quake W, but we didn't have a license for that. That is for seismic conditions. And VALUP is also good software for your earth retention systems. You can design your sheet pile wall design. VALUP is also a very good software. And Geofile is also serving a many purpose like Plaxis 2D and 3D. Like you have a retaining wall, you have even a slope stability, any kind of geotechnical problems your Geofile can do. L-pile is only for the lateral capacity of your pile. Not much more. And then CLIC will be your liquefaction analysis. So if you have the risk of liquefaction, then you use your CLIC. Automatically, CLIC uses your cone penetration resistance value. These values will be in your Excel data. So you have to convert these data into your subcontract will be giving these data in your Excel sheets. But you have to convert these Excel sheets into the graphs. Once you have those data Excel data sheet, you can input those data in your CLIC software and you can check your liquefaction potential. If it is less than 1, you are prone to liquefaction. If it is greater than 1.1, then you are safe against that. Okay. Then CPTIT. CPTIT is like it is a purely cone penetration resistance. As I said, you can get the Excel data from your subcontractor. The people who have done the cone penetration test for you. You can get the data from there and then you can develop the graph. That is, the data shall be inputted in your CPT. Once this is given, you can see your C5 angle, what is the type of the soil, because your CPT cannot give you what is the soil profile present. But only thing is you can give your what is the strength of the soil. So you can determine your C5 angle, and then you can even have a bearing capacity also. Bearing capacity and settlement calculation. You can have a pile capacity calculation also on CPT type. And GRLB is purely for the drivability study, like your refusal criteria for your blow count and your dynamic stresses check. It's only for the pile drivability study. And you have many more softwares also, but the main software is this. Okay, you have many more softwares. Okay. Let's come into career and job opportunities. Once you wanted to have your career as a geotechnical engineering, you undergo 4 years of bachelor's degree in civil engineering, or your 1 year or 2 years of post graduation. If you're within the India, you can go for 2 years of post graduation. If you are going outside of India, then you can have 1 year MS program in geotechnical engineering. And let's see in which all job opportunities, like investigation company, contracting firm, consulting firm, even in the client also you can get. So I told you initially, right, when I said about the responsibilities of geotechnical engineering. So that time you have your contracting contractor, you will have you will place a role as a consultant also. Okay, so in soil investigation company, you'll be more responsible for doing the field test and laboratory testing. So this is very good if you wanted to start a career as with this geotechnical engineering in soil investigation company. It's well and good. You will have a thorough knowledge on how to conduct a field testing, how to conduct a laboratory testing. So you can join that company also. So you're responsible for the field and laboratory testing of soil and rock samples and preparation of factual reports. Sometimes you will be, if a client is asking the soil investigation contractor, subcontractor to give the interpretation report, in addition to the factual report, you will also give your interpretative report also. It is nothing but your you have to pull your data from your factual data. It is just a graphical representation of your factual data, right? As I said, so you'll have to prepare your interpretation, and you have to give your recommendations also, your shallow foundation recommendations, pile foundations, for your depth of foundation, for your size of the footing. You will have to give your recommendations for your shallow foundations as well as for your pile recommendations also. So interpretative report will be covering that also. In contracting firm, as I said, you will be responsible for the design work, engineering work, construction work, commissioning and decommissioning of a project during a tender and detailed stage. So it's everything. You are responsible for everything. Okay, consulting firm is the one who assists the client in choosing the best contractors, because consultant will have more knowledge, because they will be working with more contractors, and they will be even have the knowledge how the contractors work also. So they will be assisting the client in choosing the best contractors for their project, and consulting and guidance to the client. They maybe client is not technically sound, so these guys will be giving guidance to the client. Reviewing the specification, interpretation of the data, and detailed report on authenticity of drawings. See, this consulting firm will also review. See, whose design work they will review. Automatically, this consulting firm will review these guys' work. So it is a design work, engineering, construction. So all this kind of reviewing work these guys will do. Sometimes even they will involve in the design work also. Okay, if the contracting doesn't want, in the contract they will specify the design will be done by the consultant will be doing the design work, but the contracting will be responsible for their construction and the procurement of the material. Okay, and then if you don't if you wanted to pursue any higher studies after your post-graduation, you can go as a research scholar, which you call as a PhD in geotechnical engineering. So in that you perform some researchers' findings, and you do some experimental and field work to support your research studies. And then you have to write your research papers also. And you also have to guide some undergraduate students also. Okay, these once maybe this research scholar will take you few years, like 5 to 8 years if you are full time. If it is a full time, it will be 5 years. If it is a part time, it will be some 8 years or something like that. So you can also go as a research scholar also. And then in government sectors, you can find some jobs for a geotechnical engineer, you can find in public works department, highway sectors, or railway sectors, and some research institutes also belong to government sector, right? So you will have to see the notifications in their websites. Like if you have a position for the geotechnical engineer, you can even apply for that. For best and simple, you can start your own consulting firm. You cannot start a consulting firm as a fresher. Once you gain your adequate experience, like after 20-25 years of experience, once you are very sound knowledge and you know that you can have the capacity to handle any kind of simple and very complicated geotechnical problems, then you can start your own consulting firm, and then you can be a CEO and a founder of your own consulting firm. Okay.